Portland's Friday Forum. Today is Friday, April 13th, and I welcome you all to the state's premier civic affairs event. I'm Melody Rose. I'm the president of City Club, and I'm very delighted to welcome all of you here today. Those of you who are having lunch with us at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB or KBPS radio, and those watching on Portland Community Media's CityNet 30. Today we will learn about and reflect upon Oregon's unique Death with Dignity Act. But first, a very special announcement that I'm really pleased to be making today. At 1 p.m. on Wednesday, April 25th, I better get that right, here at the Governor Hotel, City Club of Portland is honored to host United States Secretary of the Treasury, Timothy Geithner. April 25th. Tickets and more information are available now on our website, pdxcityclub.org. We hope you will join us for this special event, and we expect that it will sell fast, so please look into your tickets. As we begin our program, I'd like to give a very warm welcome to City Club's newest members, Dan Wintner and John Forsgren. Would you please stand and let us welcome you? City Club's corporate and media partners are essential to the vitality and the ongoing sustainability of all of the club's many activities. I wish to thank our generous media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine. I would also like to extend our deepest appreciation to the Friday Forum's spring season corporate sponsors, ESCO Corporation, Morel Inc., Northwest Natural, and Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt. We are very grateful for your support. And of course, if your firm would like to sponsor City Club's mission through all of these activities, please contact the friendly staff in the other room on your way out or give us a call at the City Club offices. For nearly 100 years, City Club has provided nonpartisan civic leadership in our region and strengthened our community. With member support and participation, City Club produces over 100 civic events per year, including the one that you're enjoying today, along with multiple research reports and ballot measure studies. City Club launched our spring membership drive on April 1st with the ambitious goal of bringing 250 new members into our ranks. Please support the City Club in pursuit of this goal. It is our members who make us strong. And I'd like to offer that I can see at least 3 things that you in the room can do to introduce your friends to City Club of Portland. You can invite someone to the club's many events in the month of April. You can feel free to tweet about today's Friday Forum. And before you go, you can grab a membership brochure and share it with someone when you get back to the office or to your home. There are incentives for you in the room who participate in this month's membership drive that I'd like to describe as well. All new members will save $25 if you join City Club today or at any time during the month of April. Even better, the club member who recruits the most new members during the month of April will receive a night out on the town on us. The winner will get a dinner for 2 at Higgins Restaurant and 2 tickets to a Portland Symphony production in May. So please bring your friends, bring your colleagues to this amazing organization. Please join today and join us by April 30th to enjoy these benefits. Remember, membership truly matters. Following today's talk, we will be welcoming City Club members to the microphone for a Q&A session with our speaker. In addition, we invite everyone here in the room today to locate the index cards on your tables and write questions on those if you have them while the speaker is at the podium. I will ask for them at the end of the talk, and when I do, please raise them high so the staff can see them and collect them from you and bring them up to me. And now to our program. In the 15 years since Oregon voters first approved Oregon's Death with Dignity law, scholars, policymakers, and public health advocates have studied its application, while families, loved ones, and those dying have personally experienced its impact. Today, Sue Porter will discuss the essential features of the Death with Dignity Act, describe how perception of this law has changed over 15 years, and demystify some of the most popular misconceptions. Sue Porter received both a Master of Business from St. Mary's College and a Master of Science in Bioethics from Union Graduate College at Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York. She currently sits on the board of both the state and national organizations of Compassion and Choices and serves as a caseworker for Compassion and Choices Oregon. There, she works with terminally ill patients who consider pursuing Oregon's Death with Dignity law. She counsels people on end-of-life choices, explains the legal requirements and process, and works with families to help them understand their range of options. Sue appeared in the movie How to Die in Oregon, which won the first place Grand Jury Award for a documentary at the 2011 Sundance Film Festival. And with that, please help me welcome our speaker, Sue Porter.
Thank you, Melody. Thank you to all of you. It is a real honor to be here at City Club, and I'd like to especially thank Marge Kafori for this invitation, and Amy Harris, who did all the work. Also, it's such a pleasure to see so many colleagues, friends, and my family in the audience. As you know, today's topic is Oregon's Death with Dignity law. And although this is a matter regarding how people choose to die, it is not a dark and depressing subject. Is it sad that people are dying of a terminal illness? Of course it is. But Oregonians in this situation are privileged because having to increasingly suffer as they approach death is not necessary. Many of us are not as afraid of death as we are of how we're going to be approaching it. And terminally ill Oregonians are able to find comfort and control, which are reasons they express for why they avail themselves to this law. The majority of people who are stewarded through the Death with Dignity legal process go through Compassion and Choices, a nonprofit organization. We are staffed with volunteer counselors throughout the state, a team of medical doctors, and management to ensure that the needs of people availing themselves to Death with Dignity are correctly guided through the legal requirements. Those of us who do this work find it to be an affirmative and very rewarding endeavor. We meet with families who contact us in need of our services, who are appreciative of the law, who are receptive to our counsel, and they are a pleasure to interact with. They rely on our stewardship and trust us into the closely knit folds of their family and friends until their family member chooses to end their life peacefully. We are with them at that moment, which is truly a privilege and an honor. What I'm going to talk about today is the implementation and experience of Death with Dignity. I'm going to talk about how language matters, how the law works, doctors, pharmacists, and hospice participation, and the hastening, which is when someone ends their life. By show of hands, I'm curious to know how many people here saw the documentary How to Die in Oregon? Okay, about maybe more than half of you. It's a film on death with dignity that won Sundance, as Melody mentioned. And if you saw it, part of it demonstrated the interaction that we have with families. We are continually amazed by the humor that people still maintain as they are approaching death. One person I worked with, Roger, who is in the film, was determined to taste every flavor of Ben & Jerry's ice cream before he died. And then I think he went on to Haagen-Dazs to know Roger was truly to enjoy him. And we have so many people who approach the end of their lives that way. This is part of the positive aspect of death with dignity. Although people are going to die, they are not anxious about when, how, and if. They can and do set themselves on a course of who they want to see, what they want to accomplish, if they can, what they want to say, and how they are going to orchestrate the end of their lives with dignity. Language matters, so I'd like to clarify a few terms that are often misused in this context. One term is suicide. What we do is aid in dying. We do not use the term suicide because it is usually violent, impulsive, and can be a spontaneous reaction to a temporary problem. Aid in dying is an alternative solution to an irreversible medical problem, which is only going to get worse. It's nonviolent. It's a rational, enduring request from a dying person. The law is about physician aid in dying, not about euthanasia. Euthanasia in Oregon is illegal because that entails someone else making you die versus you making yourself die. Typically, euthanasia is done by a doctor injecting a fatal dose of medication into a patient, which is legal in the Netherlands. In Oregon, a person has to self-administrate the medication, either by swallowing it or through a feeding tube. The doctor's role is that of writing a prescription, but the person must take their own final action to mortality. Being terminally ill means having a prognosis of less than 6 months until death. Even if someone has a fatal illness with an extended timeline, it is not considered terminal within the context of this law until 2 doctors agree that there is less than 6 months to live. And the last terminology is a hastening, and that is when a person has decided to hasten their death. Dying is imminent, and taking the lethal medication will end their lives at the time of a hastening. I assume that everyone here has witnessed the decline of a loved one and has hoped that it would not happen to someone else close to them or to themselves. But if any of us were terminally ill, we would at least have the choice of finding relief with death with dignity and the support and knowledge of compassion and choices. The law has been implemented since 1998 when 16 people died. In 2011, 69 people died using the law. That was the end of the 14th year, and in 14 years, there have been 596 people who have died with death with dignity. That averages to about 42 people a year. As in any medical procedure, there is a failure rate, and to date, the failure rate has been 1%. But to put this in total perspective, about 0.2% of all people who die in Oregon use death with dignity. At a debate in California a number of years ago, the opposing person said that it was difficult for him to get worked up about such a small number of people who use the law. I replied that this isn't about how many people use the law, that it's about freedom and choice for every resident of Oregon. The reason most often given for wanting to use the death with dignity are decreasing ability to participate in activities that make life enjoyable, loss of autonomy, and loss of dignity. There's about an equal number of men and women who use this law. Depending on the year, the median age is 70 to 72, and about 90% of people are on hospice. Most of the people have cancer. Some have motor neuron disease, ALS for the most part, and some have COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There's a significant percentage of people who get the medication for control and peace of mind, but they die without using it. Everyone says repeatedly that they want the comfort of knowing the medication is there in case things get worse. We don't know exactly what the number is of the people who don't use it, because some people who have the medication are disqualified when they lose mental capacity. Some people are still alive, and according to the state, they don't have records of a certain number of people about whether they ingested the medication or not. But there is always a significant number of people who die peacefully without it. So how does the law work? When meeting with someone who has initiated interest with death with dignity, and people initiate it, they come to us. We do not go after people. They come to us. We never assume that death with dignity is going to be the final choice they will take. Our mission is that people receive state-of-the-art care and a full range of choices for dying in comfort, dignity, and control. One man I recently met with told me in all seriousness that he was looking forward to getting to the other side and reuniting with his cat Bimbo, who had died 20 years ago. There are mitigating circumstances that cause deliberation, such as religion, moral beliefs, or disagreement within a family. A few years ago, a man wanted to discuss the prospect of death with dignity. As I met with him and his family, his overwhelming concern was that his priest was going to find out. I assured him that all of our information remains confidential. At that exact time, his priest phoned to see him. After he hung up, my advice to him was that whatever he chose to do or not to do had to be within his own comfort range. So it was really important that he consider all alternatives. I never heard back from him, but we did see in the papers that he had died shortly afterwards. Even if he had started with death with dignity, he would always have the option to stop at any time. A person must be 18 years old, a resident of Oregon, of sound mind, be terminally ill as prognosticated by 2 doctors, be able to self-administrate the medication, and communicate their desire autonomously. In other words, a relative, a caretaker, or any previously written document expressing their wish for this would not be valid. I realized once that a lady's desire for death with dignity, although she made it perfectly clear to me, was being expressed to her doctor by her partner. The doctor was new at the process, and we caught the error. But the request and timeline had to start all over again. So no matter how debilitated a person is, only they can undertake the required procedure. When two doctors give a prognosis of 6 months, we know it is exactly that. It's a prognosis, which is a forecast of a likely course based on a reasonable medical judgment by two doctors. But we also know that this is not an exacting science. We have people who die as quickly as when they are going through the legal process, and we have people who outlive their 6-month prognosis. In the film How to Die in Oregon, Cody Curtis was given her prognosis for 6 months. She outlived that date and jokingly said that she had given away all of her jewelry and had to go out and buy some more. And we really like that kind of news. Often when talking about Oregon's law, people respond by saying that if they ever had Alzheimer's, they would not want to continue living. But with Alzheimer's or any mental disability, the law does not apply. The law requires full informed consent by the patient, which means completely understanding the alternatives to death with dignity, and of course, understanding that if they take a lethal dose of medication, they will die. This requirement, I have to emphasize, this requirement applies as they go through the process, once they have the medication, and at the time that they choose to die. We have had people who are disqualified during any of those periods of time. One year, a person I had suffered a stroke in June, and she didn't die until September. Usually people die pretty soon after that. The Compassionate Choices volunteers go in twos to Hastings when someone's going to die. And if we determine that at that point that the person is not cognitive, we have to abdicate ourselves from that situation. Even if the person made it perfectly clear in advance what their wishes were, the pivotal point here is that as the law stands right now, whether it's correct or whether it's not, everyone in this room is protected from unknowingly being coerced into consuming medication that will cause them to die in the death with dignity process. Another way everyone is protected is that the law requires that you self-administrate the medication. If this criteria were not in place, again, it would cross that consequential line between someone making themselves die or someone making you die. Each person takes their own final action to death. Unfortunately, it has happened that a person lost all their ability to move, was completely 100% paralyzed, and was therefore disqualified. With a motor neuron disease such as Lou Gehrig's, people can still move parts of their bodies up to a certain time. But if they try to avail themselves to death with dignity, once they have become completely paralyzed, the law eliminates them because someone else would have to manage their feeding tube with the medication. And the cruel twist to this is that people end out suffering even more and even longer than if they had approached us earlier. There are many safeguards ensuring that this is no magic pill under an enchanted bush. We have had people literally yell at us for that magic pill. But in order to get the medication, there is a minimum 15-day process. The patient initiates the process by telling their doctor they want to pursue death with dignity, and this begins a 15-day timeline. From that point on, there is the required appointment with another doctor who must agree with the prognosis, a medical request form that needs to be signed with witnesses, and another oral request to the doctor. It's very rare that this is ever accomplished in 15 days. And this is because the person is typically very compromised due to illness. He needs to coordinate with family or caregiver, set up multiple doctor's appointments, arrange for medical records to be sent, reviewed, coordinated. And if one of the two doctors questions whether the person is suffering from depression or any psychiatric abnormality, psychiatric counseling may be required. Recent records showed that the timeline to get the medication varied between 15 and 58 days. The law specifies that no doctor or pharmacist is obligated to participate with death with dignity if it is against their own personal convictions. Therefore, if a doctor refuses, the process becomes lengthier as the patient needs to be under the care of two new doctors. My advice here to everyone in this room is if you believe in this law, it is important to ask your doctor if he or she would abide by death with dignity if it would ever become necessary. A reply that, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you," needs to be more explicit. A doctor's view of taking care of you might be different than supporting you through death with dignity. This has happened to some of our people, so make sure you and your doctor are on the same page. Also, I'm speaking from experience because when I was recently doctor shopping, a doctor was astonished that she would even be asked about death with dignity. She considered her views to be her own personal beliefs that she did not have to share with a patient. So because of that, I had no idea where she stood. Well, I had a pretty good idea. And therefore could not have her as my doctor. There are also some medical organizations in Oregon whose policies do not allow their doctors to participate. We work well with hospice, and over the years we have gotten an increasing number of referrals from them. Some hospices allow their nurses to be at Hastings, while others do not allow them to attend, or they can attend but not be in the room as the person ingests the medication. But we are always grateful for the hospice involvement with our people in helping alleviate pain with palliative care, and they are always more than welcome to be at any of our appointments. If someone does decide to hasten their death, they look at the very near future. They evaluate the quality of their life and try to gauge at what point life will be no more worth living. Dignity plays a significant role in this. There's a sense of personal empowerment that we perceive about ourselves. But when we decline dramatically, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, we start questioning what our purpose is in life. Dignity assumes self-respect, a sense of assuredness, and fundamental pride. So a person, in essence, is contemplating quality of life, dignity, purpose, and how much they are suffering. So at some point, the burdens of life outweigh the benefits. And they choose a date in which they would like to die peacefully. This date is fluid and it changes. Sometimes they are waiting for an occasion, such as wanting to see the photos of their granddaughter when she graduates from law school. Or they say, when I am in so much pain that medication keeps me asleep or takes away my ability to function, I don't want to live anymore. Occasionally, the date is moved closer due to an unexpected trajectory of their illness, and sometimes it's postponed because things aren't as bad as they had anticipated. People, for the most part, at this time have come to terms with dying, especially if they are a lot older. Those who are younger, at best, are resigned to dying. Again, in the film, Cody, who is 56 years old, states that, of course, she would not rather die. But at the end, you see that she is shackled by all her relentless pain. Her life is relegated to more medication, being in bed, and even the inability to laugh because it hurts so much. She finally resigns herself to an inevitable death in December. Each hastening is unique. Again, the people do not lose their humor. One person, right before she died, had a sign near her bed that read, "What if the hokey pokey really is what it's all about?" Typically, a hastening is a gathering of family and close friends. People have said their goodbyes. There's laughter, there's tears, there's memories, photographs, the family pet, and favorite music playing in the background. Sometimes there are a few people, and sometimes there's a large crowd. This is totally up to the person to decide. Two of my colleagues had a hastening where a woman had arranged in advance for everyone in attendance to enjoy lunch in the private dining room of her retirement home. When they were finished, she had asked them that they return to her apartment where she was waiting with her grandson, and at that point, she chose to die with dignity. When people are ready, we sometimes ask them if they have any final words they would like to share. One lady said that she would like to give her husband instructions, but she knew he was not going to listen to her anyway. She said he's going to do whatever he wants to do. Another lady's last words were to tell me precisely what to do with the rubber doorstop after the morticians had left. One gentleman, after taking the medication and before going into a coma, started telling my colleague a joke. Not ever wanting to miss humor, she was afraid he wouldn't get to the punchline, but he did. We asked the people 2 questions before their final moment of ingesting the medication. Would you like to change your mind? And please say what this medication is going to do before you ingest it. In 14 years, there's been one person who changed his mind. The person drinks the medication and within about 3 to 5 minutes goes into a deep coma, and from that point on, never knows what happens. There is no loss of bodily function. We cannot predict the time until death between from the time they ingest the medication. Sometimes it takes minutes and sometimes it's hours. Recent hastenings have been under 1 hour, but there is no guarantee and they can go on a long time. After the person dies, there is sadness, but also relief that their relative is suffering no more. So a hastening really is the culmination of self-determination and mercy, the person's rightful choice to end their life peacefully, combined with the compassion of a doctor who provides the means. The opposition has always feared a slippery slope with consternation about abuse, making people die, death panels, hordes of people moving to Oregon for this purpose, and disability activists fearing that their lives would be devalued and vulnerable populations would be at risk, or that the role of a physician would be reduced to that of an executioner. But because our law is so restrictive in its qualifying factors and its implementation, not an iota of perceived fears have occurred. Objections are now made more on a personal, religious, and moral grounds rather than perceived threats that were never realized. Oregon has been the petri dish for nearly 15 years as academics, medical centers, health policy experts, bioethicists, politicians, and research continue to study the Death with Dignity law and its effects. In 2008, Washington passed a Death with Dignity bill. In Montana, a physician can prescribe a lethal medication for an adult who is terminal. And in that state, it is strictly between the patient and the doctor. There is not a Death with Dignity law. In November, Massachusetts will be voting on a Death with Dignity bill. And there's activity in Hawaii and New Mexico in pursuit of this type of freedom. If anyone has questions about other states, we have someone here from our national office, Bevan Burns. Please stand up. And Bevan is our expert at this, and she will be glad to answer your questions afterwards. Thank you, Bevan. So what has changed in Oregon since 1998, our first year of implementation? Number one, people typically are coming to us later in the stage of their illness than they used to. This can result in making our relationship with them more perfunctory rather than more involved on a continual basis. It also results in more people losing capacity while they are getting the medication or once they have it because the disease is at a further stage. Generally, we used to visit with people more often, whether it be social or for a specific need. We enjoyed their company. I had someone who was in a nursing home for quite a while and was craving bagels and cream cheese. When I visited her, I'd bring bagels and cream cheese, a small marble tray, plate, good flatware, and a toaster. Now, you'd think that a toasted bagel and cream cheese would be an easy recipe to follow. Well, the first time I did this, my lack of culinary acumen quickly surfaced as the toaster set off the fire alarm for the entire facility. To add embarrassment to this blunder, Peter Richardson was there filming for his documentary. It ended out on the editing room floor, I'm glad to say. We had no idea what was causing the alarm and ignored it until management traced it to the room and knocked on our door. They were very kind and requested in the future that I use their cooking facility, which I did. Another change. The cost of medication we most commonly use used to be $100 to $250. Over many years, it slowly rose to as high as $1,500, which is beyond what some of the people can afford. But our team of medical doctors did a lot of research for a lengthy period of time, and we can now offer the choice of another medication that is $250. Another change is that more insurance companies are covering the cost. Also, our Portland team used to cover the entire state. We now have an active team in Eugene and Southern Oregon. When the law was enacted, there were very few doctors who participated. Last year, out of 114 prescriptions written, over 60 doctors participated. Also, studies in Oregon have revealed an increased use of hospice compared to other states, more attention to pain control through palliative care, and an increased number of people dying at home instead of in hospitals. One question that always comes up is what happens to the medication if it isn't used? The medication, as any medication, still belongs to the family. We suggest that they give it to hospice who dispenses of unused medication, or they can take it to a number of police drop-off centers. And as dangerous as this drug is, when someone dies, there are toxic drugs surrounding them. A supply of OxyContin, morphine, fentanyl patches should be disposed of along with the Death with Dignity medication. In closing, I always want to give recognition to the hundreds of people who have availed themselves to our law and who have died under our law. They were determined, forthright, and brave. The terminal illnesses we see are random. For all of us here today, do remember that every day counts. And to quote Emily Dickinson, that it will never come again is what makes life so sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for informing us so gracefully. And now, if you have written a question on an index card, I would ask that you hold it high so the staff can see it and come around and collect it from you. You may need to hold it up for a few minutes while they make their way around the room. The first question for our speaker, as always, comes from our Friday Forum host, who today is Barnes Ellis. Barnes is a recently retired partner from the law firm of Stoll Reeves and is the general counsel to Mercy Corps presently. He is a member of the City Club's Board of Governors and has been a club member, I hear, for decades.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue. That was very informative. In an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal last week, Diane Coleman and Stephen Drake, disability rights advocates, opposed in what they called, contrary to your advice on vocabulary, a legalized assisted suicide ballot initiative in Massachusetts to be voted on this November. And they made the following statement regarding our law here in Oregon. Quote, Oregon's annual reports tell us very little. For one thing, assisted suicide laws like the one in Oregon lack teeth, and they named 3 points. 1, doctors who fail to give a report, doctors who fail to report giving a lethal prescription face no penalty. And then 2, the state does not talk to doctors who denied a request to prescribe lethal drugs in order to find out why, or to families to learn why the person requested assisted suicide and what happened after the legal drugs were obtained. And 3, no form of non-compliance with the law's relatively flimsy safeguards is monitored or investigated, end quote. So that's the strongest statement they made in opposition. And my question to you is, what is your response?
Well, can we take one of those at a time? I got a little lost in the muddle. Can you read one? I don't have my glasses on.
All right.
Can you read? Yeah, just one at a time.
The first one was doctors who failed to report giving a lethal prescription face no penalty.
Okay. Really honestly, I don't know how they would even know that there's a doctor who failed to report.
That's their point.
Oh, I see. Well,
They want doctors to be required to report or
They
somehow
do
find
report.
some way to know the doctors that.
okay,
that-
so the doctors do report. If they fail to report, I have no answer to that. Jason?
Yes, the Oregon Medical Board reviews those, and there were no investigations forwarded to the OMB last year. I think the first year there were a few, but in the last few years there have been one or two. It's basically chasing paperwork.
Oh, okay.
Thank
you.
The second argument they make is the state does not talk to doctors who denied a request to prescribe lethal drugs in order to find out why, or to families to learn why the person requested the drugs.
Well, my reaction to that is what goes on between a doctor and a patient is totally private. So it's not the state's business to know about those conversations.
Okay? And the last one they had is no form of noncompliance with the law's relatively flimsy safeguards is monitored or investigated.
Well, I think we have very strong safeguards, and we do not have any large glaring noncompliance. I don't know of noncompliance, to be quite honest. So they're accusing us of not having good safeguards, and I think our safeguards are just really iron tight.
Thank you.
All right, we will now take questions from the floor. As always, we invite members to the microphone to state their membership and give us your name. Also, please be sure that your question is under 30 seconds and ends in a question mark, or I'll hold up the question mark for you. Also, I'll be sure to read at least one of the index card questions along the way. Please.
Harold Waite, City Club member. Quick technical question and my real question. Is the documentary available on DVD somewhere?
Oh yeah, you can. It's accessible on Netflix. It's accessible every place now. Okay. Amazon.
Okay, thank you. My real question is, do you foresee any liberalization in the future? And I'm referring specifically to those situations where someone has made it abundantly clear what they want to do and then lose their capacity.
I am speaking for myself here now, not Compassionate Choices. I would like to see a lot of liberalization of the law, but I don't see it coming in any foreseeable future.
Hello, I'm Gabriel Adra. I'm a City Club member, a doctor by training. And my question also has to do with capacity and how you said if somebody has a mental disorder that disqualifies them. And my question is, how big a practical barrier is that? Because I could see if somebody has cancer that's spread to their brain, somebody could say, you know, they can't make the decision. If they had a stroke, if they've had a history of any mental health disorder in the past, or really any of your clients or patients, they're going to be anxious, and somebody could slap an anxiety disorder on them really easily. So how big an issue is that for somebody to give them an anxiety or depressive disorder?
It's a big issue.
Yeah.
Any mental psychiatric problems in the past do not necessarily bear on what's happening currently. But you're right. I mean, when the medication or the cancer has gone to their brains and it has affected them, it does disqualify them. Does that answer your question? I wish. There are a lot of things I'd like to do, but no. I mean, we are very diligent in following the law, and if the law says mental capacity, we just stay within those guidelines. and so do the doctors.
I'll take one from the tables. You said at one point in your prepared remarks that there has been a very small failure rate. What happens when it does fail?
We have had a very small failure rate. There's 3 of them in which we were able to determine why it failed, and one of them we were not. When it fails, the person by law can take the medication again, but in all cases they chose not to, and they died within about 10 days of their natural.
Thank you.
Roger Meyer, City Club member and country doctor, and the question I have, Sue, is I really love your presentation. It just touched on a lot of points, and our medical agora had suggested this as a topic, and I really think it's a great one. But I have worked for 50 years as a pediatrician for hospice for children, and I think that's a whole different area, and I'd like your view on how do you approach working with a child and his family with a terminal condition that obviously is the same criteria, with a lot of discomfort, a lot of the child's volition is, of course, not easy to calibrate.
So is there a question with that, or do you think it should apply to children?
What do you do with a child who's got terminal illness? What are the dynamics, and how does the law relate to that?
The law does not apply to them, unfortunately, if they're under 18 years of age. The parents would have to make the decisions, and I can't speak to it because it's illegal. My opinion is, again, I think the law should be a little more liberal, and I don't think the children should be made to suffer in a way that adults can find alleviation.
Okay, another question from the tables. What does it say on the death certificate after a death with dignity?
That's a really good question. It says that they died of their disease, and all life insurance is still valid.
Ted Kay, City Club member. I was once tweaked by a friend out of state that said we Oregonians could avail ourselves of death with dignity, but we couldn't pump our own gas. I applaud at least part of that, the first part of that. Question is, doctors in Oregon, what is the sense of doctors in Oregon? How many are pro, how many are against? And second part of the question, how might that compare to doctors in other states?
Well, first of all, the doctors who prescribe is a very vertical field. It's oncologists, neurologists, primary care doctors. It's not the dermatologist and foot doctor. As far as the proportion of those who support it and those who don't, I don't have any real figures, but I am really glad to say that it's growing. And with other states, I don't have any information. If someone from National has that information, that would be good. Bevan, can you answer that?
What I can share is what we've found, and we haven't done any particular polling of physicians nationwide. We recently did a poll of physicians in Hawaii where we found that 3/4 of doctors agree that there should be a decision between a patient and a doctor, and that if their terminally ill patient asked them, they would fulfill that request. And what we do see throughout the nation is the national polling shows that individuals agree with this as a choice. About 77% of the public believes that, and we find that that's about in line with what doctors agree with as well throughout the nation.
Thank you, Bevan.
Next question.
Thank you for your presentation. I really admire the thoughtfulness of the words you choose to express your position. I hope I can take some of that language back with me. With the recent experience of the death of a family member, I spent a lot of time over a few weeks in the company of hospice providers and counselors and other caregivers who spend their careers dealing with these issues, and I was really struck by the sense that people who make their career in that field are wired a little differently than most of the rest of us, and perhaps a little bit better. And I was wondering if you would be willing to share something personal about how you chose this field, or what drew you to this field, and perhaps what you know of some of the other reasons that people end up working on this issue or in hospice or other kinds of careers that mean they're confronting death on a very regular basis.
Well, I can tell you how I started working in this. The short answer is that she's not here today, but Christine Farrington used to be on the board, and she asked me to join. It was also very much a part of my family values. I remember when I was 22, my father taking me to a nursing home, and they were wheeling all the very elderly people around a conference table, and they were singing nursery rhymes. And he asked me to never allow that to happen to him and to slip him a pill. And I even remember at that age saying, I don't want to go to jail. That was in California. And my mother died, my father died very quickly, which was a blessing. And my mother died inch by inch, from, in wheelchair and diapers, etc. And she always said, help me, help me. It's over, it's over. And there was nothing I could do. So personally, that always left an impression with me, and I just personally believe in this. As far as other people I work with, there's a number of them who are medical people, and there's a number of them who have had experience. We have a few of our volunteers whose relatives use the law, and so it's quite a mixture.
Carol Witherell, City Club member, and thank you for helping demystify the law and your experience with it. Another questioner asked about physicians, and my question is your organization or others doing some things with physicians so that this information can be available proactively to patients and they can be referred to organizations when they are diagnosed with an aggressive or incurable terminal illness?
We are working. I'd like to pay tribute. I don't know if all of you are familiar with Peter Goodwin, Dr. Peter Goodwin. He was one of our founders who died recently. And before Peter died, he set up the Peter Goodwin Educational Fund for us to reach out to doctors and educate them. Jason, do you want to give a minute to that fund to explain it in detail more, please?
Sure. The Peter Goodwin Fund, I'm Jason Renaud, I'm the Executive Director of Compassion Choices of Oregon. Peter Goodwin Fund sets aside a set of monies for our medical directors to do outreach for physicians, to meet them and to explain to them what the Oregon Death with Dignity Act means from the physician perspective. So often patients call us and tell us the sad story, I'm dying and my doctor won't help me. So we found that when I call the doctor and I say, what's wrong? Like the phone gets hung up. When a doctor calls, when a peer calls, the phone gets picked up and they listen and they, if they can, work through their own personal concerns and are led to be able to help their patient. So those funds are to help our doctors to reach out to other doctors.
I'd also like to point out, Peter Lyons, can you stand up, please? He's one of our medical directors and does a terrific job reaching out to doctors. Thank you, Jason.
I'm afraid we've run out of time for further questions, and we're going to have to stop this conversation. Please join us next Friday for the mayoral debate between Eileen Brady, Charlie Hales, and Jefferson Smith, and again on Wednesday, April 25th with Timothy Geithner. And as we close for today, I hope you'll all join me in thanking Sue Porter for her remarkable education effort here today. We thank you very much for being with us. We are adjourned.